Hey guys! So last month I did two companion videos about the fantasy genre, five popular fantasies that I will never read, and then five fantasies that I am very excited to read. And I thought it would be really fun to do those same videos, but with a different genre, and this time science fiction. So let's go ahead and jump in. We're going to do the obviously it's in the title, but five popular science fiction books that I have no interest in reading. And we're going to go ahead and start with The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. This is the story that H.G. Wells wrote and is why we call him the father of science fiction. In this book, the main character goes 800,000 years into the future, meets two different species, races of people, and then, like, goes from there. I'm not entirely certain because I haven't read it, but I looked at this and I was just like, that sounds like it's going to be a commentary on, like, social commentary for his time. It was written back in the day, right? Victorian era esque, plus or minus, because I'm terrible at knowing when Victorian era is. But um, so it's probably going to be a little bit more social commentary, which is not something that I'm always 100% on board for. And then I'm really picky about my time travel because, and I will say, I get super excited about time travel media, and then I'm always disappointed. Most of the time, I'm disappointed because the internal logic of it doesn't make sense. And if you're wondering what I mean, let's look at Harry Potter and why if time travel shouldn't be messed with was a 13-year-old girl given a time turner so that she could get to class. Like, oh my goodness. And then but nobody else was willing to travel back into time to do, I don't know, block Voldemort from coming to power. It was just very, very strange. Anyway, so um like that kind of stuff really, really bothers me. So it's like, okay, no to the storyline, no to the time travel, or wary of the time travel. And then obviously it has more Victorian-esque language, so it's just like, no, that's too many things that I'm not super fond of. However, that being said, of all the books that are on this list, this is the one that I am most likely to read at some point because it's only 120 pages. And sometimes I just like to read those books where it's pointed to as the the book that started an entire genre. So The Time Machine or like Frankenstein for the horror genre kind of thing. Um, so it's the most likely, but still not that interested in reading it at this point. After that, I do have The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. Yes, this is a very well loved copy. It is my husband's copy. Um, and I read the description of this, and it's essentially that there's this guy on Earth. Pardon me. There's a guy on Earth, and like moments before it's completely blown to smithereens, he is actually transported off of Earth and is by some alien. And now this human and the alien are like traipsing through the universe using the Hitchhiker's Guide as their guide. And I thought, oh, that sounds so interesting. And then I really thought about it and realized that that meant it's a bit of a traveling story. And I was just like, so we're really just going to go through and like meet a bunch of people and like, oh, this is starting to sound like something that I'm not going to like. And so, um, and part of that is just because like if that's how you're describing it, there is no central problem. I like there to be a central problem if at all possible. And then the other part of this is that so my husband is in the middle of a reread, and a little bit ago he actually handed me the book and said, "Just read this chapter. It's only a couple pages. It's a little bit. It's not about the story. It's kind of a one-off thing. So just read it." And I read it, and I handed it back to him, and I said, "Okay." And he said, "It was funny, huh?" And I said, "Oh." I didn't know it was trying to be funny. And so That's part of the problem too. It's such a different sense of humor. Like, it's one thing when you recognize the book is trying to be funny and it's just not your sense of humor. It's an entirely another thing when, like, you don't even recognize that it's trying to be funny. That's really bad. So, like, the writing's not for me. The storyline isn't something I'm generally super excited about. So, it's just not something that I'm particularly interested in reading. The next book on the list is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. And it's a very popular book right now, especially with the TV show. But it's essentially this future dystopian type universe where I guess a lot of the population has died off. Women are now subjugated. They're like, you fall into a couple different categories. You're either like trophy wife or baby maker or like a nanny, I think. Not entirely certain. But you can only do a couple things. Like, you're not taught to read. You're not taught all these things anymore. And we're following our main character of Fred. Not sure how it's pronounced. I know it's a portmanteau, but I don't know how they pronounce it. Um, and she's a handmaid, aka baby maker, for this dude, Fred. And she remembers like what it was like before. And so that's where we start the novel. Um, this is a total downer of a book. Like, I'm not a huge total downer type book anyway, but also we are currently living in a dumpster fire where a lot of our rights are, in general, not just women, not just reproductive rights, but like voter rights. All these things are now being challenged, and people are trying to take them away. And so I'm just like, you know, a little too close to home there, like when we're living in this dumpster fire. So I don't think I can read that. Um, I don't know that I would ever want to read it, but especially not now. The next book on my list is Dune by Frank Herbert. Again, my husband's copy of this book. It is old. It was published in 1965. It is well loved. This is one of those classics that, most people are like, "Oh, you have to read it." Um no, I don't want to. Like, that's the problem. So, the premise is just that we meet this guy who's, essentially royalty on this planet that's basically just a desert, but they do have this spice that I don't remember exactly what it does, but it's something really cool and everybody wants it. So, and then his family is killed off and he has to be the heir, and now he's going to go on an adventure to do something. I'm not clear on the details because I keep reading the description and like I don't understand it, what they're trying to say, or like it just doesn't stick with me. But also just like I'll be frank, like the author's name is Frank. I'll be upfront. I don't always love fantasy that is this, or science fiction that is this old, especially written by male type people, because it tends to be pretty male heavy, and the females are, if they're there, are very much stereotypes, which I just don't like. I'm not interested in the storyline. Like, also, it has a little bit of a tarnish on it because this is one of those books that all the people who want to gatekeep science fiction, it's one of their favorites. And I know that not everybody who loves this is a gatekeeper. I really do. But at the same time, like, just not really thrilled about it. And lastly, I have a whole author, and that is Orson Scott Card, which you may know from Ender's Game. That is his primary series that he is known for. Orson Scott Card has said some very questionable things about queer people in general. So back in the day, a while ago, he basically said some homophobic remarks. You can look them up, but he never went back on them, really. And he hasn't said anything recently that I'm aware of, but he is also Mormon, and like, I understand that not every Mormon is a bigot. I really, really do. However, the Mormon faith tends to harbor individuals that are bigots, and it doesn't really force them to question that bigotry. And so I would very much doubt that he's changed his mind on gay people or people of color, because he has also said some pretty racist things. And honestly, for people who are saying, okay, but like separate the artist from the art, that's totally fine to do when the opinion of the artist isn't something that is actually like actively harmful to other groups of people, number one. And number two, there are certain media, including stories, where you can't separate their opinions. You just can't, because a book is not written in a vacuum. And so if you have fundamental thoughts about specific groups of people, you're either just not going to include those people, which is not realistic, or you're going to present them in line with your feelings. And so it's like, no, you can't separate the art from the artists. So, and honestly, with that kind of an opinion, I don't have any interest in doing so. So that's it. There was an honorable mention that went to Robert Heinlein, mostly because my husband really does love Robert Heinlein, and he was telling me all about the books, and I was just like, well, that doesn't sound interesting. That one doesn't sound interesting. Oh no, that doesn't sound interesting either. But no, that one I would actually be willing to try a couple, because I haven't heard anything majorly bad about him as an author or what he's writing. So that's it, guys. Those are my 5 popular science fiction books that I have absolutely no interest in reading. Next week I will post up the companion to this, the 5 science fiction books that I am very excited to read, so stay tuned for that. And until next time, guys, I hope you are having happy reading, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.